We thank you as always so much for staying with us here on News Talk. Bruce DuPoit with you on this finally Friday. Washington notched another preseason win last night over Detroit at home at FedEx, 21-17 the final, but it was costly. Quarterback Robert Griffin III went down during the first half with a concussion. Another quarterback drama situation for Jay Gruden and company. Noah Frank is digital sports editor at WTOP.com. He joins us now with a recap. We'll talk about the Nets as well, who are starting to close the gap, I think, on the Mets. We'll talk about that in a moment. Welcome back, Noah. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for your time. Got to start with the injury. Robert Griffin III was under duress much of the night. Without Trent Williams, the line wasn't what it has been. It wasn't what fans hope it will be. The rush was fierce, and it was that all too familiar situation of Griffin going down and not getting up.
Right. I mean, this has been a sort of a focal point in the offseason, at least in terms of what the team's talked about. They go out and they get a lineman in the first round. The idea being, we know the offensive line hasn't been good. It's been a root of a lot of the problems. They've given up some of the most amount of sacks in the NFL the last couple of years, and then we come out and we have basically the same issue, which is they don't run block that well. They're not creating lanes, and so you're setting up long third downs, and then they're not pass blocking well, and people are in the backfield left and right, and RG3, I saw an earlier report that they think he's probably going to be okay, unless there's any sort of setbacks. They expect him to be back for next week's game against the Ravens.
Wow.
But we're still not getting at the real problem, which is he needs those reps. He needs time to get back in the swing of things because of all the games that he's missed. It's not that he was left in this game too long. He needs multiple drives. He's not getting opportunities because every time he turns around, there's two guys in the backfield in his face, and until they shore up the offensive line, you're never going to see that quarterback progression.
There will be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. I think some of it has already started, that he was in too long, or that the scenario that he was confronted with where the core components of the O-line weren't there, the opportunity for him to take hits and perhaps be injured, that it was maybe more likely than not. So inevitably, particularly, I mean, let's face it, the stakes are high. This is a guy that some still believe can recapture the glory of his rookie year. He is the starting quarterback, so the second guessing, it's on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think 4 drives is too long. Again, he needs the time to show that he can do what he needs to be able to do for them to have a successful regular season. Mm-hmm. I get the sort of secondary part of it, that if the offensive line isn't blocking, you're hanging your quarterback out to dry. But you'd just be hanging one of your other quarterbacks out to dry if it wasn't RG3. It'd be Colt or it'd be Kirk, whoever it would be. Clearly, against a first-team defense, this O-line is not ready yet, and missing some players like you mentioned, but that is the focal point. Is they have to be able to protect anybody if they're going to have anybody succeed.
So with the offensive line caveat having been firmly established, can you talk about the play of the quarterbacks against Detroit?
I mean, it's I feel like it's sort of a broken record because look, your second and third string quarterbacks look better and they succeed and they have high completion rates and they move the ball down the field and they score touchdowns. But again, this is against second-team defenses. This is the starters are out of the game for the other team too, and these are guys who are maybe coming in, for occasional spots, in the regular season. But really, these are guys who are replacements in case the number one guys get hurt. This is depth. These aren't the guys who are going to be out there every down. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt. We were talking right before we came on, and you said, "Oh, they're 2-0 in the preseason, right?" And I said, "Yeah, they're 15-3 in the preseason since 2011." I mean, it doesn't mean anything. No. It's great. I suppose it could build some confidence, but we've seen the results not met out that way. It's just you don't learn anything from final scores. 21-17 looks great if you pick up the paper today, but it doesn't tell you how well the guys who are actually going to be playing every Sunday did against the other guys who are going to be playing every Sunday.
Any savvy coach, and this is most coaches I think, are using these games, and they're not games, they're using whatever you want to call these spectacles, to figure out who are the best guys, who should make the roster, how do these guys compare with one another. The score be damned, it doesn't matter. So go 0-4. I mean, teams have gone 0-4 in the preseason. They've gone deep. They've won. It has to be factored in. The record means nothing.
Yeah.
I know that money drives all. I know that money is the bottom line always. But in the old days, they had 6 preseason games. Now they have 4. Is it time to blow it up and rethink it?
I mean, I don't see any reason why, and I'm hardly the first person to suggest this or talk about this, but I'm in complete agreement with the idea of if you've got what, 16 regular season, 4 preseason. You've got this 20-game package. Why don't you just take 2 of those other games and make them regular season games?
Right.
Make them matter. You get that many more opponents. You get that many more games that people actually want to attend. I mean, I'm sure you saw the stands last night.
Ridiculous.
Maybe 10,000 people were there, and why would you not rather have one more home game where you fill it up, or have 50,000+ no matter what venue you're in, and a game that matters that people want to see, where at least if you're putting your body on the line, right, it's for something tangible.
You hate to see injury. It's the worst part of the game probably, but to see guys go down with serious injuries in meaningless games, again, I know I can be naive because I'm not a real sports guy, and I know money drives everything, but I would love it if they would kind of rethink this and maybe blow it up, because this feels like failure to me.
Well, I don't think it costs you any money to just switch. I think you gain revenue because you're going to have more people at that game. You're going to have more people spending money at that game if it's a regular season game. You still have the same amount. You still have your 8 regular season, 8 regular season, 2 preseason home games. Now it's 9 and 1. It's still the same amount of
right.
games. It's just they actually mean something.
So you watched the game, you absorbed it, you took it in. What other takeaways? Running game, receiving, the defense. What other takeaways did you take?
Honestly, we kind of have to wait till next week until we start getting some of these guys back who are going to be there every day. I don't know if Deshaun Jackson's going to be back next week, but until he's part of the offense, until we see Jameson Crowder as a fully functioning part of the offense, we're not going to have an idea of how good they really are. That's why these first 2 weeks are kind of, they're scrimmages, they're practices, mm-hmm. and it's hard to take too much away until you get a little farther down the line.
Am I right in thinking, and this probably is true for most teams, that preseason game number 3 is the last time we see the presumed starters, and the 4th game is really rest everybody, don't put them out there, don't risk the injury? It's that determination of the final 53 that's kind of driving the train?
Yeah. You kind of think about it the same way that you think about spring training, where you start ramping up, and then the starters get more and more innings, towards the end of spring training, and then it's really about those last position battles. Who's your last guy on the bench, and who's your last guy in situations? So I hope that RG3 is healthy. Not just for the sake of him being healthy, but I hope that he's healthy for the Ravens game, because that is going to be your truest regular preseason sort of indicator of what kind of team you're looking at for the regular season.
The Nats are still 4 back of the Mets, but I want to believe, and I do believe, that they're starting to put it together and that the Mets are starting to cool. Do you feel better about this team's chances than you did a week ago?
I feel better than I did a few days ago. But they are winning. They won a couple games in Colorado, but those are games you're supposed to win.
Sure.
And the good thing for them is they have a very soft schedule the rest of the way. But so do the Mets. Both teams have very soft schedules. The only teams over 500, I think the Mets have 5 games left against teams over 500 right now. And, they play the Nats 6 more times. The Nats are right at 500, so, take that with a grain of salt. But both teams have pretty easy slates the rest of the way. The Nats have a very heavy home slate the rest of the way. It's like 27 of their final 42 are at home. So, they have opportunities in front of them. They have this really soft 9-game homestand in front of them where they play some really, sort of bottom feeder teams in Milwaukee and San Diego and Miami. These are games they have to win. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, last night they let a game get away that is the type of game that they have to win. They had the beginnings of doing things a little better than kind of what we talked about, strategy-wise last week.
They had Max Scherzer on the mound against a last-place team.
Yeah, and against Johan Flande, who, unless you're a hardcore baseball guy, you don't know who that is. But this is the second time in a couple weeks that Max Scherzer has lost to Johan Flande. It happened at home, and now it happened on the road. And this is a 2-2 game. The Nats came back and tied it. And we talked about sort of the matchups and the bullpen and everything. Things started to go that way. They were matching up, to get through the tough righty and the tough lefty, and Arenado and Carlos Gonzalez, and then just kind of hung a young right-hander out to dry against the guy who, a left-handed hitter who beats up right-handers, and he drives in the game-winning run, and they lose 3-2. And it's just, you're at the point where when you're in those games now, when you're in those one-run tie games, those winnable games, every one of those games has to be treated like a playoff game, because otherwise you're not going to the playoffs. And I still don't get that sense of urgency. And so in a lot of ways, this reminds me of 2013, where they actually played great down the stretch. People forget about this. They were basically a 500 ball club, played great down the stretch, lit fire, but they didn't make the playoffs because you had this excellent Braves team that won 96, 98 games. They don't have that team this year in the division. They don't have the runaway train in the division, so they still have that chance. But they're going to have that stretch where they win 3/4 of their games.
And it's been great to see Steven Strasburg come back with 3 real quality starts since his return. So stay optimistic, Nats fans. We may close the gap yet. Noah Frank of WTOP.com. Thanks very much as always. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Back